Okay, sir, we can start now.
Good afternoon. My name is Jürgen Baumann. I'm heading the Smart Sustainable Urban Transport project from GIZ in Delhi. As Mohua has given the Smart SUT project the opportunity to host this breakout session, let me welcome you all to this panel discussion on sustainable and green mobility. To kickstart the session today, we have with us Secretary Shri Durga Shankar Mishra, who will deliver the keynote address, followed by Mr. Knill, head of BMZ's division Policy Issues of Cooperation with Asia and South Asia. He will talk about the roadmap of Indo-German Green Urban Mobility Partnership and the framework to strengthen international cooperation in sustainable transport. Let me take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Secretary Mishra and Mr. Knill, who have kindly agreed to join this session and share their visions. I would also like to welcome all the esteemed panelists for joining this panel discussion. With the United Nations Annual Climate Change Summit, COP26, around the corner, the paradigm shift towards a green economy is being frequently discussed around the globe. In today's session, we will focus on the role of transport and mobility in promoting a climate-friendly future. Transport currently contributes to 23% of global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions and 18% of all man-made emissions in the global economy. Therefore, the sector will play a key role in mitigating global challenges related to climate change. Since Mohua has been at forefront of taking up a number of initiatives in promoting green mobility projects, without taking much time, let me invite Shri Durga Shankar Mishra to deliver his keynote and to share with us Mohua's vision on sustainable and green transport. Mr. Secretary, please.
Okay. Okay, unmute again. Very good evening, and maybe in Germany again it must be good afternoon. So good afternoon to everybody who has joined this panel today on sustainable and green mobility. Is my voice all right, Jürgen?
Yes,
sir.
perfect.
Okay. Thanks a lot. So thank you all for joining this, discussing this such an important subject, sustainable and the green mobility, which is only few days from now, the world is going to discuss in the COP26 at Glasgow, the issue of the climate change. And when we talk about the climate change, urban mobility is one of the major contributors to that. In fact, cities are greater contributor, and among the cities, urban transport has a major role to play there. And with that kind of a background, our discussion today is going to be very, very important. There, I would like to welcome my friend, Mr. Philip Neal, who was here only few days back. And we had a long discussions on the various aspects of the urban green mobility. In fact, I would like to thank the Federal Republic of Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel, who was here, and we signed urban green mobility agreement for €1 billion, and a lot of things are happening out of that. Only last week, we had the KfW's Managing Committee's officer, Mr. Opis, Stephen Opis was here, and we again discussed on various aspects related to the urban mobility. So that shows the kind of interest Federal Republic of Germany is taking in country's growth, and urban mobility is one part of that. Under the Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi, from 2014 onwards, the country has taken various measures on different sectors, and just for the last 2 years, because of the COVID-19 challenges, there has been some setback, but the country has been moving on a high trajectory of economic growth. And also the urbanization in the country is at a very fast pace. Our total population today in India and the urban area is considered to be around 460 millions. I'm saying so because we didn't have the 2021 census, which is a decadal census we have every this year. But this is projected to grow to near over 870 million by the year 2051. That means next 3 decades, we are going to add the same number of people in the urban area what we have today. And it is going to give a huge challenge because urban mobility leads to the congestion, to the pollution and various other things, because the access to the various things one should have easily that is delayed if the mobility is not there. The country has addressed and is addressing 2 different measures. One is the getting the metro system in our big cities. We already have nearly 740 kilometers of metro operational. We have nearly 1050 kilometers of metro or the regional rapid transport under construction, which we are going to add in next 4 to 5 years. We will have around 1800 kilometers. And many more kilometers are under planning right now. We have a BRTS system of nearly 450 kilometers in around 19 cities. With the help of, with your assistance, in the recent budget, our Honorable Finance Minister announced about 18,000 crores green urban mobility project to be launched, and we are working on it. The ministry is working on it. Very soon we are going to have not only the public transport adding more buses to the urban area, but also the challenges to which we promote pedestrianization, that is walking on the road, and also the cycle mobility, that is the non-motorized transport. We have promoted transit-oriented development policy. We are trying to get our transport planning added to our regular urban planning of the cities. So the country is taking such kind of policies which are conducive to this. Even on the metro front, which is a very, very costly, cost-intensive project, we have added Metro Light, Metro New, and the Water Metro. And among them, the Water Metro, thanks to KFW, thanks to your assistance, this is a new thing which has come in the country, and many other cities which has got water, they can use this for improving the mobility. Metro Light, you have shown interest in Coimbatore, the city of Coimbatore. This is the city in the south. And in my discussion with friend Philip Neal and also with Opus recently, various other Metro Light projects, KFW has shown some interest. We are working with you. You have shown interest in, recently Surat and Ahmedabad. KFW has contributed to that in many other places. So this is one mode. Other is the bus public transport system, and the third is the non-motorized transport system. All these 3 places. In fact, I would like to thank GIZ, and I continuously mention in all my discussions, it is not the money which is important. What you bring through this collaboration is the technical cooperation. Because we learn from the best practices across the globe, what is being done, what has worked, and how that can be adopted in our country. Because in our country, 1, urbanization is moving very fast. 2, there is economic growth, people are becoming prosperous. Our per capita income is increasing. And normally, once the income increases, one of the investment is the housing, and the second is investment is the personal mobility. That is, people buy car, people get 2-wheelers, and that congests the roads. So we need to move towards fast on the public mobility, and we have to make the city more livable by adding walkability, cyclability, and that's the learning we get from you. So I think in the last couple of years, over 50 projects in different cities, whether the city of Coimbatore or Kochi or this is Bhubaneswar or any other cities, I mean cities which have been affected by them. Various examples have come up, and these are assisting towards low carbon footprint. They are assisting towards addressing the issue of the greenhouse gas. Our other initiatives of my ministry, like Swachh Bharat Mission, whose version 2.0 was recently launched by the Honorable Prime Minister, and only a couple of days we issued the guidelines for its operationalization. Our another initiative, Atal Mission for Urban Rejuvenation and Transformation, Smart City Mission, all these are focused, and the Housing for all these are focused towards making our cities less impacted by the carbon footprint. Our Minister for Environment and Forest, who is going for the Glasgow discussions, his statement I read this morning that after the COP21, our commitment was to bring the carbon intensity to 35%. We have already achieved around 23%. And that is true. Focus on mobility, focus on energy, focus on various other things which are leading to the adding to the carbon footprint. So the country is poised towards achieving our commitment on the COP21 or to the various sustainable development goals. And there, help from the world community in different forms, and especially from the Federal Republic of Germany, KfW and GIZ, is highly appreciated. I close my discussion here and look forward to the discussion today on such an important subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'm now happy to invite Mr. Knill to say a few words on the roadmap of the Indo-German Green Urban Mobility Partnership and the framework to strengthen the international cooperation in sustainable transport. Mr. Knill, over to you.
Yes. Good morning and good afternoon to India. It's again a pleasure to be with you. My name is Philipp Knill. I'm the head of the division for South Asia and India at BMZ in Bonn. And it's a great honor actually to participate in your urban mobility conference in India virtually. And it's a great thing that you push things forward, even though for sure still the pandemic in Germany and in India and worldwide slows a few things down. But I think we can see that Mr. Mishra, and this is really congratulating you, we can see that your ministry and the Sustainable Urban Development Challenge and the Green Urban Mobility Challenge is really pushed forward very forcefully in India. And let me maybe mention two things again that have been mentioned earlier, but they are, let's say, very important for our joint work. One, the COP26 is starting on climate change next week, and we will again meet with many Indian colleagues to discuss further issues of a similar kind. This is a great challenge globally, but at the same time, we have the Sustainable Development Challenge with the Sustainable Development Goals that needs to be achieved globally and worldwide in India, in Germany, and in other countries. So we need to bring these things together. And what we see in your policy in India is that you're exactly following this path. And actually, our main purpose on all of this is really to make it possible and to support and also learn from your efforts on bringing climate change and sustainable development together. Mobility for all, green mobility for all is the goal. And we heard in the inaugural session very nicely, for example, through the concept of hyper-local cities, how it can work. For sure, it's a long way for Germany, also for India and for other countries. But I think we are at the start, at the beginning of a green urban mobility revolution, and we can see many concepts and many, not only concepts, but investments, policies and programs that are very concretely pushed forward. And again, Secretary Mishra, really my personal admiration also how you take this challenge forward and also take our joint collaboration forward and push actively for good implementation. So India is probably not the country that has caused the most carbon emissions worldwide, but it is certainly the country which is part of, which needs to be and which will be part of the solution. We also see a big responsibility from the German side to tackle this issue of climate change. And as I said, the achievement of the SDGs, bring it together. And actually the Green Urban Mobility Partnership that we have concluded with India, between Germany and India in 2019, is probably a very good example of how to do it. We are trying to increase our dialogue, learn from each other. And when I hear, for example, that 4,000 e-buses will be introduced shortly in Delhi, when I see that we are already part of a joint collaboration where 500 e-buses are being on the roads in Tamil Nadu, these are dimensions where actually also Germany needs to speed up our willingness and implementation drive to keep up with India on these issues. So dialogue and learning from each other is very important. One important part of the Green Urban Mobility Partnership. Secondly, really look at concrete programs, policies, and the frameworks for investments. And I think, as you said, 18,000 crores investments for green urban mobility, big program in India. You have the metro policy, you have the cycle for change, and other programs and policies that you are pushing forward at the national level, at the state level, and at the city level. This is very important and very much also supported from our side. And we hope that we can come together even more in concrete programs like Metro Mumbai, Metro Nagpur, Metro Surat, and so on, but also looking for sure at the more important and planning issues of bringing together green infrastructure with intelligent planning, and possibly also concepts like the hyperlocal city that in the long term are the decisive revolutions, let's say, that we have to undergo in Germany and probably as well in India. So I was speaking about the Green Urban Mobility Partnership with one pillar of the dialogue, the second pillar of concrete programs that we are pushing forward together. And thirdly, also bringing in, let's say, more actors than just governments in this work. We see that the private sector is key when it comes to green urban mobility solutions, but also civil society for sure, participatory approaches, also translated via think tanks and civil society organizations is key. We know that in India, there's such a dynamic and vivid landscape of the private sector and the civil society. And bringing this in even more in our joint work and collaboration, I think is a fantastic opportunity. We also see that Mahua is forcefully leading on the green urban mobility policies, but we also see that other government institutions like Niti Aayog, like the Ministry of Heavy Industries, and other ministries are trying to contribute their bit. So also on the German side, we have more ministries than just BMZ involved in that dialogue and work with India. So we think this is a whole of government approach and even a whole of society approach we need to push forward. And actually the Green Urban Mobility Partnership is something exceptional for Germany in the world. I think such a partnership with such substantive work is unique and is certainly exemplary also for in other contexts. So again, congratulations, Mr. Mishra, also to you that we have been able to come so far with our work. Much work remains to be done. I think we have had a very good start, but much work remains to be done. We need to work, I think, very decisively every day to push things forward. And I'm really happy that we can listen also to further concrete ideas and inputs today from Slowcut, from SEPT, from GIZ and KfW, with the dear colleagues and experts coming in later on. And I'm really very happy that we have this occasion to further exchange and be a part of this. And actually, we are in the second year of participation, so it's something like a tradition already, be a part of this urban mobility conference in India that takes up the real issues for the future in the sector and is also in that sense something which is not only relevant for India or for Germany, but for many other countries in the world. So thanks a lot. And I'm really looking forward to even continue more intensively our work.
Thank you, Mr. Knill. Allow me to make two little remarks that I always feel are important when we are talking about mobility. Transport is the backbone of urban development, and we should continue to work on the capacity development of urban planners and transport planners, because this is where we need to get them out of the silos. It's not only about constructing technically a metro line, we also need to understand that this needs closely to be coordinated with the urban planning overall. And my second remark is urban mobility always has to look on the long term of the development and the decisions that we are making. What we decide nowadays will have an impact for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So that's very important to always remember this. With this, I want to hand over to my colleague Amek for the moderation of the panel and for the session, for the further session. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jürgen, for introducing the session. Good evening, everyone. I'm Amek Gopinath. I work as a technical expert at GIZ India under the Smart SUT project. I would also want to thank Sri Durga Shankar Mishra ji, who shared with us the Mohua's vision on sustainable and green transport. And I would also like to thank Mr. Knill, who spoke on the roadmap of Indo-German Green Urban Mobility Partnership and the framework that we have followed to strengthen the international cooperation in sustainable transport. So to quickly move on to the sustainable and green mobility session. Under the Smart SUT project, the GIZ India team has been working extensively across various mobility aspects, and as part of which we were supporting Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs under the Smart SUT project. We developed a toolkit on mobility as a service project and under the Green Urban Mobility Partnership. So as part of the session, we are launching this MAS toolkit. And this project was led by Mr. Narendra Verma, who is the technical expert from GIZ India as part of the Smart SUT project. He's a transport planner with experience in working on projects related to sustainable mobility. He's currently working with GIZ on its bilateral technical cooperation project. The project works with smart cities of Kochi, Coimbatore, Bhubaneswar, as mentioned before. I would request Narendra to take up the stage and would request you to give a brief overview of the platform and also to launch the MAS toolkit. Over to you, Narendra.
Thank you, Amek. I hope I'm audible, and I'll not take much time. I'll take a few minutes because we have a esteemed panel discussion ahead of us. Today, in the presence of Honorable Minister and Mr. Secretary, we were happy to support Mahua in launching a toolkit on mobility as a service. So I would just like to, for all the audiences who are joining us today, I would take you through the website and just like to share a few points on what all we have developed, and then I would welcome you all to kind of explore the website and see all the documents that we have developed. I hope that this will provide the much push that is needed for Indian cities to move towards a digitalized future. Let me just share my screen, and Amig, you can let me know if the screen is visible on the panel.
Not yet, Narendra.
Okay, let me try again. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, it's loading. Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay, so today we launch this toolkit on mobility as a service. You all know that Mahua has been pushing a lot of digital solutions through its smart cities mission, and a lot of urban mobility projects focused on digitalization have been launched in past couple of years, and a lot of huge amount of mobility data is being generated from various modes of transport. So what could we really do with all this data? Can we put all this data in a single platform and provide commuters, a single mobile app to book their tickets through? So this was the idea when we started developing this study. And we thought that we would compile a set of recommendations and set of learnings for the cities and other stakeholders, so that they have a guidebook or a guideline if they want to move towards implementation of such a initiative, because mobility as a service is a very complex subject, and a lot of stakeholders and a lot of people need to get together on a single table to provide this platform. So let me just show you the website. So this is the website where we have home page. We have an introduction section which talks about what the toolkit is about, and what the mass study is about. And then you have this mass learning platform where we have compiled 6 reports. So if you go into each of the reports, for example, if I go to mobility data policy, this section will talk about how at city level you can develop and form the mobility data policy which is required to support an initiative like MAS. The report is here, and then you can download the report. You can see the report, go through the report. Similarly, all these sections are designed. We have also designed a mass readiness index tool. So if you go to mass readiness index tool, what it talks about is that for a city, a lot of indicators we have identified, and if you can just go through this tool, you'll get a score out of 100, and a city can kind of get an understanding of, on a scale of 0 to 100, where the city are in terms of the preparedness towards mass. And also we have some other resources available related to mass here. We'll be populating this website in coming days. Since multimodal integration is also a very important aspect when we talk about mobility as a service, we have also developed a tool for cities to kind of measure their level of achievement in terms of multimodal integration. So they can use this tool as well to measure where they are in terms of integrating different modes. So that's all about the website. I mean, what I would like to say that for all the participants who are joining in today, please explore this website and go through the website, go through the documents, and I hope the recommendations and learnings from these documents will help you to develop a better understanding of what mobility as a service is, and what as experts and as cities we need to do to move towards a future where we can provide commuters with a solution where they can book their tickets on a single platform using a single app, and they don't have to kind of use multiple applications to book their tickets. So that's about it. I would like to kind of stop here and probably hand over the session to Amig to hear from the esteemed panelists. Thank you, Amig, and thank you, Mr. Secretary and Mr. Philip for joining us today as well.
Thanks, Narendra, for quickly taking us through the MAS platform and the toolkit. Not going to waste any more time. To quickly get into the panel discussion and the presentation for today's sessions, we have 4 speakers. Mr. Carl Pete, who's Director, Knowledge Management and Impact, SLOCAT. He'll be talking on why green mobility interventions matter for sustainable mobility. Secondly, we have Dr. Shalini Sinha, Executive Director, Center of Excellence in Urban Transport, CEPT. She would be talking on need of recalibrating CMPs in India. Thirdly, we have Mr. Shirish Mahendru, who is a technical expert, Smart SUT, GIZ India. He would be presenting on data-driven transformation of Indian public transport systems. And last but not the least, Miss Anya Fauri, Senior Portfolio Manager, Mobility and Climate Finance at KfW. She would be speaking on innovative financing models for promoting green mobility. I would request Mr. Carl Pete, who's the Director of Knowledge Management and Impact at SLOCAT. Mr. Carl Pete is Senior Advisor to the SLOCAT Partnership on Sustainable Low Carbon Transport. Carl oversees and provides strategic direction for SLOCAT research and knowledge development activities to support promotion of sustainable transport in global policies on climate change and sustainable development. Over to you, Mr. Carl Pete.
Thank you so much, Amig, and just would like to confirm that the video is visible to all. Yes. Okay. Wonderful.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, it's working now.
Excellent. Okay. I'm not seeing it myself. So yeah. So thank you. Thank you all. Good morning. Good morning from Chicago, where I'm based. The sun is coming up, and it's great to be able to join you in your afternoons and early evenings. And again, just want to really thank the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs for this opportunity to present. And also want to thank GIZ for the very kind invitation. As I'm not seeing the screen myself, let me double check if I can get a different view here. Okay, so I'll move through the slides, and is it necessary to share my screen, or again, you're all seeing the presentation? Is it correct? You're not seeing the presentation. Okay.
Not
well, then
yet.
Let me
Not yet.
Okay. Forgive me. I thought you were seeing it. I mean, would you like to share it, or shall I share from here?
Try resharing, maybe.
Okay. Let me give that a shot, and then we're all on the same page. Give me a moment to find that.
Mr. Carl, like on the right bottom side of your screen, there's a share button.
Yep, I've got it. I'm just not seeing. Here we go. I've got the window now.
Yeah, perfect. It's working now. Please go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So thanks once again, and jumping right into it. I appreciate this opportunity to really frame some other comments for this panel under the banner, as mentioned, of why green mobility interventions matter for sustainable mobility. And yeah, I'd like to do this in four different parts, looking at some recent transport trends in India and the Asia region. I'd like to highlight a few of the challenges and opportunities for expanding sustainable mobility within the region, highlight several case studies to help move us in the right direction, or move us toward Paris Agreement targets and sustainable development goals. And finally, to point out a few action channels which will allow the scaling up of these important efforts. And I'm going to frame some of these transport trends in the context of the recently released Transport and Climate Change Global Status Reports, led by SLOCAT with many other partners. This is the second edition of the report. And this allows us to take a deep dive into a number of trends worldwide. I'd like to focus first on car ownership growth in Asia. As noted here, the average car ownership rates in Asia increased 87% over 10 years. This is more than 3 times the global average. And we see the highlighted bar in purple here for India, an increase of roughly 150%. So again, seeing the challenge of increased motorization. Also important, though, to note that this growth is coming in the case of India from a very low baseline of 22 vehicles per thousand.
Mr. Karl, sorry to interrupt. I think the slide that you're sharing on screen is not the right one. Do you want to just quickly check? Because the current slide is the last slide. Can you go up?
But let me pause that share. What I'm seeing on my screen is perhaps not what you're seeing on your screen. So let me come to that.
Mr. Karl, we are actually on the slide 12.
Okay, are you seeing it now?
Not yet, Mr. Karl.
Okay. And forgive me all as let me come back to the sharing. Forgive me having submitted the slides. I was looking for this. Okay. So let me reshare the screen. What I'm seeing on my screen, I think, is not what you're seeing on your screen. So apologies for that. Okay, are you now seeing the first slide of that set?
Mr. Karl, not yet.
Okay. I've said it, and I don't know if Narendra, perhaps you can jump in here. And forgive me for this technical difficulty.
Sir, right now we are visualizing your slide at 12.
I'm sorry?
Could you click on a slide and move it with the left or right tab, sir?
I am looking for that option. Okay, this is something that I often do, share the screen, but I'm not sure why I'm getting this.
I'll share.
Mr. Karl, Naren is actually trying to share. He'll help you with that.
Okay, let's try this.
It's visible.
It's partly visible now. If you go for presentation mode, it might be better.
Okay, I will come to that. Here we go. I think I'm not sharing.
Now it is visible. Please go ahead.
Coming from elsewhere. All right. Thanks for that. Okay, so I think I'm not sharing the screen, so if you could please move to the following slide. All right, thank you very much once again, and I will keep it moving and make some time for other panelists as well. So as I had noted here, looking at car ownership growth in Asia, we're moving in perhaps not the right direction in many cases, but again, pointing out that India, though growth is strong, is coming from a very low baseline, well below the global average of 172 motor vehicles per thousand residents. So the next slide, please. Okay, and moving on from private four-wheeler vehicles to motorized two-wheeler growth in India. And India, again, has one of the the largest motorized fleets, along with China, with Indonesia, Pakistan, and Vietnam. We see over 10 years increase of roughly 150%, nearly twice the increase in Vietnam and other strong growth areas. So again, this is really just to highlight a challenge. These are the factors to be addressed in continuing to increase mobility without necessarily increasing motorization or finding ways to make these motorization rates a bit more sustainable. Next slide, please. Turning now to transport CO2 emissions in Asia, we see that these emissions grew more than 40% in Asia, again, over 10 years. This is more than twice the global average. And as you can see here, that while a number of countries have in fact reduced their transport CO2 emissions per capita, more than 2/3 have exceeded the global average in transport emissions growth. Once again, we see very strong growth in India, roughly 60%, though again, from a very low baseline of really about a quarter of global average on a per capita basis. And the next slide, please. And so with these trends as a backdrop, we see we can capture and perhaps summarize a number of challenges to increasing sustainable mobility in Asia, in India specifically, and in peer countries in the Asia region. And of course, in every part of the world, we see increasing motor vehicle congestion in urban areas. For the 5 most congested cities are in Asia, with 3 of these in India. We see increasing goods movement by road freight, increasing nearly double digits, both in China and India, as opposed to more efficient rail freight and inland waterway transport. And again, worldwide, in many parts of the world, we're seeing continuing subsidies of fossil fuels, 40 billion a year alone in OECD countries and in the BRICS countries, including India. And at the same time, we're seeing fairly weak linkages between renewable energy, between vehicle electrification efforts, very important, but also renewable energy feeding into these efforts. Turning to the next slide, we see the opposite side of the coin, which is a number of, and if we could have, please, the next slide. Thank you very much. A number of opportunities for sustainable transport in India and Asia. We're seeing increasing rapid transit to resident ratios in urban areas. This is the increased provision of public transport, and we see about 5% increase worldwide, with nearly 3 times that growth in India in recent years. We see significant electrification of passenger rail, and roughly 3/4 of rail transport is electrified, with the bulk of that in India as well as China. And we're also seeing increasing fuel economy for light duty vehicles across a number of Asian countries, including India, China, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, and a number of others. And I think very importantly, I'd like to note that India is one of only 6 countries in the world with fuel economy standards for heavy duty vehicles as well. So with the segue from the opportunities into the next couple of slides, again, moving through them quickly, I'd like to highlight several case studies that show the recent successes and opportunities for further gains toward low carbon sustainable transport. The first of these is in the area of electric mobility. This is I'd like to highlight a recent study by WRI India on the total cost of electric 3-wheelers. And the study referenced and analyzes ride hailing in urban areas, looking at about 100 kilometers per day of usage. And as you can see from the green bars on the left, the total per kilometer cost of both e-rickshaws as well as e-autos is lower than the corresponding internal combustion variants on the right, including CNG, petrol, and diesel. And this highlights really the viability of electric 3-wheelers in commercial applications, and with recent or ongoing FAME 2 subsidies, the total cost per kilometer becomes even more economical. A second case study focuses not on electric mobility, but on active mobility, non-motorized transport. And I'd like to highlight a recent ITDP study from ITDP India, I should say, looking at the impacts of COVID-19 on mobility of women to access jobs and education. And with this, you can see some results from a recent survey. The obstacles to safe cycling, or the feeling of safe and secure cycling among women in India. And you can see to the right of the slide, a number of profiles that have been released through a very important effort, again, from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs to increase cycle-friendly COVID responses and increase the safety for cyclists of every age, ability, and gender. Moving on to the next slide, please. The third case study focuses on India's fossil fuel and renewable subsidies. And this India really is a front runner in this area, having incrementally reduced its oil and gas subsidies by 3/4 in the space of 3 years, while increasing funding for renewables nearly 6-fold. And this slide draws from a more recent report from IISD, looking at mapping energy subsidies in India in 2020. We see some of the trends at this point not necessarily moving in the right direction or in the same direction, with oil and gas subsidies up, with higher fuel prices, renewable subsidies down, although these are expected to expand. And again, we have skyrocketing support for EVs, which is an important complement to increasing the renewables in the energy mix. I've got just 2 more slides that I'd like to touch on, turning from these case studies to a number of action channels for scaling up these success stories, again, across India, across the Asia region, and in peer countries and regions as well, worldwide. So the first of these is the NDC Transport Initiative for Asia. It provides policy and technical support to shift the transport paradigm towards zero emission transport. As you can see, this is a joint effort of GIZ, of WRI, SLOCAT. It also contributes to this, as well as BMU. On behalf of BMU, I ought to say. And so in this way, we as a coalition are focused on China, India, and Vietnam, and looking to expand beyond that, beyond those countries to others in the region. A final action channel I'd like to highlight is the LEDS Global Partnership. In the next slide, please. The global partnership, and in particular the Transport Working Group, of which SLOCAT is a co-lead, along with Sustentar, the National Renewable Energy Lab, among others. And so just to quickly highlight some of the global approaches, include a transport toolkit for low emission development strategy, regional workshops to meet context sensitive needs, as well as in-country support through a climate help desk. So with that, I would like to turn to the final slide. I'd like to thank you once again for this opportunity to present. I appreciate your patience with the technical difficulties, and I appreciate the help in moving this forward. And I would invite, in closing, all of you to explore the Transport and Climate Change Global Status Report for more trends, opportunities, challenges, case studies, as well as action channels in this area. Thank you all so much. I look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Mr. Pete. Thanks for presenting the opportunities and case studies on sustainable transport in India and other Asian countries. Before we quickly move on to the next presentation, I would request the audience to use the chat box to share your questions with the speakers. Next up, we have Dr. Shalini Sinha, who is the Executive Director, Center of Excellence in Urban Transport, CEPT. She'll be presenting on need of recalibrating CMPs in India. Dr. Shalini Sinha is also an associate professor with Faculty of Planning at CEPT University and teaches postgraduate courses in transport planning and transport modeling. She's a transport and urban planner with nearly 20 years of work experience. in India and the United Kingdom in the areas of public transport planning. Dr. Shalini, over to you.
Thanks, Amik. Am I audible?
Yes, Shalini, you are.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'll just share my screen. Give me a moment.
Perfect. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thanks, Amik. Good evening, everyone. So today I'll be talking about need for recalibrating comprehensive mobility plans in India. In context of the sustainable and the green mobility and the increased emphasis on this, what are the changes that are needed to be done in the comprehensive mobility plan preparation process itself is something that I'm going to touch upon. So broadly, two parts of the presentation. The first part talking on the background and the policy context, and the second part, which is focusing on how should cities go about developing sustainable transport strategies. So this is something that I think all of us are aware of. 3 ASI framework: avoid, shift, and improve. And when we're talking, apologies for that. So in this framework, essentially, in avoid, we try to minimize traveling. Shift is move towards more sustainable modes, and improve, focusing on improving the efficiency through the vehicle technology. And a more addition to this framework is also talking about the enabling local authorities or the so that they are able to carry forward this transitioning to the sustainable mobility strategies. In line with this, if I just quickly touch upon the National Urban Transport Policy of Mahua in 2006, which essentially focused on 2 sets of larger strategies. The first one focusing on sustainable modes, and the second one focusing on clean energy and vehicle technology. And in line with these 2 areas, we see that there have been several schemes, projects, and funding which have been taken up since 2006. So when we look at the focus on sustainable modes, there have been funding on metro. There's been funding on bus systems, on NMT. So essentially, targeting usage of more sustainable modes for travel. And on the other hand, there's been increased emphasis over the past 5-6 years on focusing on clean energy and the vehicle technology part of it. So if we look at the Paris Agreement, where India has committed to reduce the emissions intensity by 33 to 35% in comparison to 2005 levels by 2030. And we have achieved something like 21%. So there's still more to be done in that area. And there are several initiatives which have been taken towards this, out of which electrification of vehicles is also one of the areas that Government of India is focusing on. So the Government of India has this FAME scheme, under which there has been a big outlay towards facilitating adoption of electric vehicles. And so there was an outlay of about 9,000 million INR in FAME 1 scheme, that was till 2019. And the next one, which is the FAME 2 scheme, which is currently undergoing, there's an outlay of 1 lakh million INR of investment, which is there. And in line with this, there's also the statement of Government of India is setting targets in terms of EV sales penetration. At the state level, there have been 12 states which have already notified their state EV policies, and there are 5 states which have their EV policies at a draft level. So there again, the key point to note here is there is an increased emphasis, not just through the central government schemes, but also through the state government schemes. On the other hand, if we look at the economics of the electric mobility, On one hand, we have the conventional fuel prices, which have been increasing. And on the other hand, we have the battery cell cost. This is across the world. If you look at the trend, that is something which is declining. And again, in the Indian context also, as there's an increase in the adoption of electric vehicles, we would expect this battery prices to go down further. And in comparison, the commercial electric tariff also is something which has almost remained constant, not much of a change there. And therefore, this is expected to also, if you look from the financial perspective, the economics perspective, it is going to bring down transport costs. And so it is more like a win-win situation because this will also bring in positive impacts on the overall GIZ emissions and also the quality of life of people. So while there has been so much of an emphasis on green mobility, if we look at the uptake of the electric vehicles in India, the uptake has rather been slow. And this is also because at a larger policy level, while we're talking about the increased impetus towards green energy or green mobility, in terms of how do cities translate this at the local level is something that cities do not really know. And that is where it is also a question of developing a longer-term strategy rather than just having a few one-off projects that the cities undertake in this regard. So coming back to this NUTP policy, so there are two sets of strategies that as I mentioned. And what is important is the long-term strategy document that is prepared, or the comprehensive mobility plan which is prepared, takes into consideration both of these. So focus on the sustainable modes as well as focusing on clean energy and the vehicle technology part of it. So coming to the city electric mobility strategy document that has been prepared under the Smart SUT project, it consists of essentially three documents. One is the supplement to the CMP toolkit. The second one is providing guidance for estimating the emissions from the urban transport sector. And the third one is helping cities assess their preparedness to adopt green mobility. So this is the existing CMP framework, which is there. This is as per the toolkit, where there's tasks 1 to 6, which have been defined very clearly. So task 1 starting from the study area delineation part of it, going on to the data collection and identification of gaps, to scenario development, and then scenario analysis, and then after scenario analysis, identification of the preferable scenarios and developing strategies and preparation of the implementation program. So essentially in this entire task process, where and how should this green mobility be incorporated? So we looked at this and we felt that this task 3 and 4 could be defined or much more detailed, wherein we start with vision and goal setting with a larger sustainability focus on social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And while we are setting these goals, we are setting goals on mobility as well as goals towards on environment as well. And so it's essentially with that larger vision and the goals being set out, what kind of strategies should the cities focus on, should be taken up next. And while defining these strategies, it is a combination of land use strategies, mobility strategies, as well as energy strategies, which need to be considered. The next one, that is a task 4, where based on the vision and the goals which have been set out, identification of indicators which have to be done, and the strategies and the scenarios which have been developed based on the strategies would need to be evaluated. Subsequently assessing the city's preparedness so that we have the targets which have been set out, we have the strategies which have been identified, but depending on where the city is, what is a gap and what kind of actions which need to be taken, which will have to be focused upon. So these are the subtasks, so as to say, which have been defined. So Just looking at a few other documents from across the world in terms of formulation of vision, objectives, and targets. How have they done it? How have they focused on sustainable and green mobility? And we can see that across all these documents, there's a larger environment and environment objective which has been set out, and they're all focusing on clean energy transition to be happening over the next 10 to 30 year period.
Shalini, I'm really sorry to interrupt. You have 3 minutes to conclude.
Yeah, Meg, I'll be done. Thanks. So while formulating the strategy mix, while one set of measures are the land use measures and the associated transport infrastructure measures, the second set is the mobility strategies, which is looking at different travel demand measures as well. What we need to also consider are the green energy strategies. And so all of these 3 would have to go together. So just elaborating on that, so while the first level of strategy is a land use transport strategy, the second is a sustainable mobility strategy, and the third is the energy strategy. And there could be 3 different scenarios which could be defined for the city, which is active, passive, and proactive. Again, depending on the city's capacities, they could set out targets in terms of where is it that they would want to reach and what targets they would want to set out. We have also looked at assessing the city's preparedness. So there are 10 indicators, and with respect to that, where is it that the city lies, and hence defining where are the major gaps which are existing and what kind of measures which will need to be put in place. So just quickly summarizing that translation of national policies on sustainable mobility to actions at the local level is very, very critical. And that would call for development of the strategy. We already have a framework which is existing, that is a CMP framework, but it will be better to add the green energy strategies alongside with it so that the cities have guidance in terms of how they should proceed. And that is what this document that we have prepared is aiming to do. Thank you very much, and I'll just stop here.
Thanks, Shalini. Thanks for letting us know about how important it is to recalibrate CMPs looking at the larger urban transport system for cities. So we are moving on to our next speaker, Mr. Shirish Mahendru. He's technical expert, Smart SUT GIZ India. He'll be speaking on data-driven transformation of Indian public transport systems. So Mr. Shirish Mahendru is a technical advisor currently working with GIZ, Sustainable Urban Transport Projects. He takes care of the Kochi and Kerala-related work. He's an experienced urban transport professional, having most of his credentials earned in urban transport planning projects, sustainable public transport infrastructure projects like city bus systems, mass rapid transport system, and personal rapid transit system. Over to you, Shirish.
Thank you, Amik. I'm just sharing my screen. Let me know if it is visible. Can you see that?
Yes. Put it on full screen, Shirish.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, thanks.
Okay, shall I start?
Yes, Shirish, please go ahead.
Okay, so thank you very much, Amik. So today I'm going to speak on the topic of the need for data-driven transformations for Indian bus systems. Why we actually require this data-driven transformations. We know how the travel demands are changing, how the service quality requirements are changing with respect to different users. So, but the traditional practices for the bus service delivery and the design practices are still traditional. They are static based, and they're not been implemented use of data. So that is very important to have the real information base, and the bus services accordingly the design services can accordingly be delivered. Actually, this complete has been has been initiated as a part of a mandate for the data-driven transformations in the Indian bus systems for the Smart SUT project, which has been funded by the Economic Cooperation and Development German Federal Ministry. And we have taken this initiatives with the support to 3 partner states: Kerala, Odisha, and Tamil Nadu. And under part of this mandate, we did certain activities with support from various state partners and the city partners. For the one we did at the Capital Region Urban Transport is the implementation of a data intelligence dashboards. For Kerala, we did a route rationalization data tool and the complete rationalization study for enhancing city bus efficiency. And for Coimbatore also, we also did a rationalization study and also the data tool for electric bus route selection. So we have been supported also with the various technical partners across this. Then what I'll be doing is I'll try to highlight the key gaps, key issues with respect to data availability, data sets, and what problems we experience, and what are the issues and challenges we face, and accordingly what are the suitable recommendations and strategies, and also what efforts we have been put into to address few of the challenges. And we are also soon going to release a technical paper on this data management solutions based upon our learnings and everything. And we'll be soon releasing it on our social media channels. So please keep following GIZ Transport social media channels. Okay. So what is right now is the role of data in the transforming city bus services. We know this public transport is the centerpiece for the affordability and the safe mobility. But the riderships are declining and the mode shares are declining. This is because of the several reasons, and the COVID has put a bad impact also, a great impact on this, further worsening this issue. We have the issues in maintaining the service quality and the problems with retaining the ridership and attract more users from the different mode shares. And we are also lacking in with respect to the more demand responsive services for the users. Right now, the planning is more intuition based and the manual, and the reforms are required with respect to the current static schedules we have. We all know PTAs, public transport authorities, have the limited resources, and they have the scale up issues. And as I've already said, the COVID-19 has further worsened this. And it is not like that PTAs are not doing the data-driven practices. This has been followed, but there is an issue with respect to capacity. There is an issue with respect to data standards. There are issues with respect to the overall issues and challenges, which I'll further explain and discuss in the subsequent slides. There are issues in maximizing the available fleet, because we don't have the information, and the complete information is all static, and even we experience in some of the depots which we use, they have the they're using the even the timetables, this completely static. So and the standard for data formats are completely different for within the depots for the same city also. So leaving aside expected time of arrivals for the particular bus service, we users are even confused for the actual which has been planned based upon the timetable. So these are the serious gaps which we really need to address. GIZ under Smart SUT project has tried to address few of these challenges and prepared certain dashboards, prepared certain route acquisition tools on the open source platform, which will particularly support cities and scale up these issues. So I'll speak briefly also about what are the current data sets which are available and what are the key gaps. There are, we know we have the information based upon the static and real-time data. We have the global positioning system based advanced vehicle location systems. We have the ATM. Public transport agencies have the electronic ticketing machines, which records route, time, and OD pattern and the trip-wise patterns. They also have performance efficient management systems, but they have been successful so far in understanding the core functions and digitalizing the core functions like revenue collection and the performance management, but there has been inefficient, or they have been the certain lag in which requires efficiency improvements in terms of the digitalization of the service, service delivery practices and the design practices. So there are certain gaps which is leading to this an inefficiency, and which requires efficiency improvement. There is a problem with the data availability. There is a problem with the inconsistent and the missing data elements. For example, there are different within the same, they don't have the master bus stop data list, and this is changing with respect to different, and for the same bus stop, that the names are different, which is leading to erroneous data with respect to the ridership and all those things. And they also have the data management issue with respect to, we have also observed there are different depots have the different data formats. So synchronization is the issue, as I've already explained, leaving aside the expected time of arrivals, we even don't adhere to, not able to adhere to the timetables which are actually planned based upon these things. And we have seriously realized this has a serious problems related to in-house capacities. Even Jorgen mentioned in the starting that building capacity is the major paramount thing which we really need to address those things, and which we also realized, and we also worked on to address those issues as well. This is
sorry to interrupt. You have 3 minutes to conclude your presentation.
My goodness. Okay. Okay, so these are the databases. This is the problems with respect to, for example, the route network maps. They are not machine readable formats. There are tickets and fares, but the maximum are the we have experienced the stage-wise fares were there. These were not stop-wise, because this will because more stop-wise information will help to lead more disaggregated information with respect to the stops and the coverage. And then most of the cities are not counting the concessional pass users, which is almost about the 50% of the data. So we are not planning for the massive chunk of the people using the service. Gender information is another issue which is happening, and we are not catering. And I believe Capital Region Urban Transport is one of the first organizations who started collecting the gender information. Based upon this, started doing the analysis on that. For example, if there is a maximum peak load around certain bus stops, the following services, the certain planning can be done based upon those requirements. So women-based centric planning and also across genders is very important and paramount. So we can help supporting that. And the GPS and the ETM data, they are treated very separately. So this needs to be taken care of. So under GIZ support, we did certain initiatives. I'll quickly run through it. We built the open source business intelligence dashboard for Crude Bhubaneswar. So we identified certain parameters like ridership parameters based on the ridership versus capacity, rider categories, and then financial indicators for the senior management people based upon the taking informed decisions, fleet performance, service quality, and route performance. So we have also conducted few of the trainings with the staff at all levels, at the depot level, the mid management, the senior management. This is another route rationalization exercise we did for Coimbatore. They are completely based on the manual data. They have few ETM machines, but they majorly rely on all planning based upon the MIS data, the manual MIS data. So we did some route rationalization exercises for identify primary, secondary routes. And here also we did this e-bus route selection model, because we with the support we came to know that they are planning for the e-buses along there within the city. So we help them in preparing a route selection tool, which will help in identifying the most appropriate routes along with the charging locations, the opportunity charging locations, which will help in optimize the complete model and help in enhancing the efficiency for the electric buses. This is another open source tool which we prepared to support Kerala State Road Transport Corporation. This is the very basic tool to enhance the route rationalization exercises, because what is happening right now is they have the information, but they don't have the backend support services and tools according for that. So we helped in preparing this. SEPT helped us in preparing this complete tool. So this helps in understanding the peak and off-peak hours, and then the change in the services, whether they require the limited services or the express services. So they can make decision based upon the curtailment and extensions also. So this also has this gender category, and they are starting with this on their first pilot for the circular routes in the city. Okay, I'll skip this. This is basically to understand the route network designs is basically strategic planning decision, which is done in once in few years. Then we have a the timetabling, scheduling, which is more of a tactical planning, which we generally do in months or quarterly basis. Then there comes the RR exercise. The operational planning scheduling, which GIZ right now is supporting various cities to build up the database tools. But however, we also need to understand and work more on the data analytics for the timetabling, vehicle scheduling, because this right now has a limited applications. So I'll quickly cover the key suggestions. Right now, we are not at all the customer-centric user-based platforms. We really need to think about it. We need to make our services based upon the user requirements. We need to have a very strong data availability and accuracy need improvements. I'll explain very briefly about the this automated data warehouse. So standardization of data formats is very important. Technical assistance to cities and building capacity. This is the most paramount, because unless we have the capacities in-house, there will always be data related analytics will be always taken as a secondary, or as an extra addition to the responsibilities. So unless we have the in-house capacities, we cannot actually lead to this. So the state governments and at the national level, we should encourage the data science and operation research practices in the Indian PT sector. And we like I said, we supported the various cities. We have the pilots for now for the BI dashboards and the RR tool, which are available on open source. And any city which has the ETM based and the GPS based data, they can help in adopting these tools and make this as a good available for scale up. But we also need to think about the planning and optimization tools, which is also need to be required to make the more operation level information. So capacitating information is also required for ITS. Capacitating cities with respect to key functions, ITS procurement, service planning and scheduling. And we also need to think about the center of excellence or the actionable pilots to demonstrate the solution to other cities. This is just one example. I'm concluding, Amit. We know there are different data sets, there are different data problems being we have inconsistent data. So what we did in Root is to support them with the automated data warehouse. This is the one ETL based tool. This extracts and tool and load the information and then give as a input information to the final output tools. So right now what is happening is that additional data load. We have the data from the different sources. We extract this relevant data manually. We removed the outliers, we did all the data cleaning and everything, and then this has been put as input to the dashboard. But this takes a lot of time, and this requires a lot of effort from until this consulting level they are doing it is okay, but capacitating corporations and authorities on this is going to be very difficult. So what we did is in Root is we tried to did this automatic extraction relevant data for this automated data warehouse. They automatically pick this data and extract the data, and wherever there's there are irregularities, there are outliers, they remove the data, and they they try to adjust it with the minimum, with the maximum possible limit, and then they extract this data and they put this information. So this is a lot of the manual interpretation, the manual interference into the total system. So this is it, and we will soon also share the complete technical paper on this, and we will please stay tuned for our social media channels because we'll be uploading this on that. Thank you, Amit.
Thanks a lot, Shirish. Thanks for sharing your insights on how data can transform public transports in India. And I think it's a great opportunity for cities to take up these solutions that Shirish have also mentioned in his presentation. Moving on to the next speaker, we have Ms. Anya Fori. She's a principal portfolio manager within the German development finance institution KfW Development Bank, currently working in the team Climate Finance and Mobility South Asia. She has over 15 years of international cooperation work experience in different positions within KfW Development Bank and several countries, including India, South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, as well as Serbia, and few other countries. Over to you, Ms. Anya. Anya would be speaking on innovative financing models for promoting green mobility. Over to you, Anya.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amek. I also would like to share my screen, and please let me know if I'm not successful. Can you all see the screen? My presentation, because I can see it.
Yes, that's perfect. Please go ahead, Anya.
I cannot move it, so I have a similar problem like, let me just, I cannot move it.
Do you want to just check moving your slides?
Yeah, I cannot, I see. Yeah, okay, now
yeah.
I found it. Okay,
Perfect.
thank you very much. Okay,
thank you.
Thanks everyone. After we heard the need for strategies and for capacity building, as well as consistent data in order to promote green mobility, I would like to elaborate a little bit on the need for the right financing models. And before I go into detail on that one, who is KfW Development Bank? We are the financial part of the Indo-German Development Corporation, and have an office in Delhi as well, besides our head office in Frankfurt. I think Mr. Knill has, and also the Secretary Mishra have already talked a lot about the cooperation in detail. What are we as KfW offering as traditional financing instruments that are loans, mainly ODA loans, which are reduced interest loans subsidized by the German government and covered with a guarantee. They usually are provided together with accompanying measures, with grants, to support the important capacity building of our partners. But we are also able to offer promotional loans without the subsidies, but on market rates for respective projects, and can use grants not only as accompanying measure, but also to support studies, to prepare projects, and which hopefully end in DPRs that are then also for us the base to secure financing. These have been the instruments we have worked with so far, and also have been able in our mobility portfolio to finance the projects. That is the aspect I mentioned earlier, I think has been elaborated on. So I would like to move on. The Secretary mentioned our projects in Kochi, where we support the water metro implementation of a ferry system. Here, the extension of the existing system, but also, I think more important, introducing electric hybrid ferries, boats. Besides that, we support metro projects in Mumbai and Nagpur, Ahmedabad and Surat in the line coming up. And we are also having a project together with the government of Tamil Nadu, where we support them to modernize the bus system in the first step by replacing existing old diesel buses, but of course also by implementing new e-buses. And also here, the financial traditional instruments have been sufficient, especially in the field of the e-buses. We learn a lot about the need of new instruments. But before I go into detail on that one, here is an example of the bus project as well of Kochi. What is green urban mobility? It has mentioned by other speakers before, it is not only the transport, the urban public transport, and of course we welcome the ideas of Metro Light, of Metro Neo in India, and are very interested to support the partners here for an introduction of these new systems. Or looking at buses, there are not only e-buses out there, but also Kerala very interested in hydrogen technology, I think, but part of it, it's also energy efficient measures, or like Dr. Zina mentioned, the renewable energy. to be integrated. If it's solar rooftops, that can be part of the projects, or if it's energy efficient depots or smart charging infrastructure. So all these parts being contributing to green mobility are fields that we are interested in supporting, and always interested to see new project leads. Coming back to the idea or to the need of innovative financing models, why do we see there is a need for it? Taking the example of e-mobility, and particular at the e-buses, we see that the investment costs here are higher than the usual or vehicles used so far. So an e-bus can cost 2 to 3 times more than a diesel bus, or if you even look at the hydrogens, it's similar. But we are not, we cannot stop at only looking at the bus as such, but you basically have to procure a whole system. There's a charging infrastructure, there are batteries, there are tools necessary in order to plan and monitor these systems properly. So it's a lot more that is necessary, which means there are in general high investment costs at the beginning, but also in the lifetime. That's why topics like total cost of ownerships come up. Batteries need to be replaced. I learned the other day, at the moment, every 5 years. So that are costs that are, compared to previous projects, higher, and with limited debt capacities of the institutions that need to procure these infrastructure. Of course, there is a higher risk. There are higher capital costs if the capital is provided at all. The technologies are new. Yeah, Mr. Knill said so nicely, we are at the start, we are at the beginning. There are uncertain market values, topics like amortization, second life, are still cannot be answered in detail, and that leaves a risk that financiers are not willing to take. And last but not least, we see, especially in the field of e-buses, more complex business models, where previously you had basically the STU and then the OEM, also the manufacturer, sold the bus to the STU. I think nowadays it can look like this, and it is. There are so many different options of who owns what and is responsible and liable for what. So to distinguish where is the risk, where is the need of financing, really becomes a complex topic, and adds challenges to the project. So while I think there is still, of course, the need for the classical financing models in order to promote green mobility, like you can see here, the classical loans, either on the public side between, for instance, KfW and the government of India, or the STUs. At the same time, also, of course, on the commercial side, where we have the commercial banks and the OEMs. I think the market, the projects become much more complex, and we need to look out for new innovative ideas, models, how we can address the needs and the lack of financing and decrease the capital cost. I think this last slide gives you an idea on the right-hand side. The players are manifold. Yes, we have battery companies who produce the batteries. We have a charging infrastructure. We have mobility companies who actually specialize in providing a whole bus system, for instance. Yeah, and on the other hand, of course, the traditional players. And the question is, in each project, who is taking which role, who needs what type of financing, risk mitigation, etc., and how can we address that? And on the left-hand side, I listed financing instruments that are not totally new, but they are new to the mobility sector. We have, as KfW, experience with all of them in different areas, in different fields. May it be guarantee instruments where we cover risk that in order to motivate banks to provide the financing, or where we develop capital markets in the field of bond issue. Of course, KfW as an institution has issued own green bonds, but in the development bank, we have supported in Latin America companies to issue bonds in local currency, and here use basically an additional instrument of financing. An idea could be the batteries. Why do you need to buy the battery with a bus? Is it not an option to lease it, go away from the financial lease over to the operating lease? But of course, here we also see that the market needs to develop. I watched the other day a talk about the different batteries that are still in the different bus types available. And of course, without standardization, an operating leasing will not be feasible. So of course, a lot has to happen in order to use these type of financing instruments. And surely we will watch it. Last but not least, also the long-term CapEx finance for GCC models. What do I mean with that? I mean, we as KfW are limited to mainly work together with public institution and to finance investments, meaning CapEx. Of course, looking at a GCC model in the first glance, it is seems to be very difficult how we can come in here, but there might be options to separate the service fees into OPEX and CAPEX streams in order to find a way where we can also play a role and support partners. So I think there are a lot of ideas there. Also here we are able, for instance, to provide equity as an instrument, which has not been mentioned in my first slide because we have not used it in the mobility sector, but we have used it for other initiatives like supporting social entrepreneurship, supporting technology in the agri sector. So we also have other instruments in addition available. And I think it is on us and of course all the stakeholders in the area to discuss and understand where are the needs and what options are there to address them. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anya, for that very interesting presentation on innovative financing models for promoting green mobility. So we have few questions for the speakers from the participants. To begin with, the first question is to Dr. Shalini Sinha. So the question is like, currently like cities have CMPs, which are being mostly generated using conventional modeling method. And looking at how the market has evolved and the technology has evolved, there are organizations and startups who are using various programming languages, and they're using large chunk of data through big data. So the question is like, why cities or the authorities are still not using these models for developing comprehensive mobility plans, which would help the cities to develop a finer models for their urban mobility.
Thanks for that question, Amik. So I think the data sets which are currently there in the mobility sector is absolutely scanty. And the traditional 4-stage model that is normally taken is again something that requires a lot of time as well as cost. It's time and cost intensive in terms of collecting that information. there is a huge opportunity that exists in the big data in terms of the smart devices that are there, or the smart applications which are there in the mobility sector, which could be leveraged. Now, I think that is where the capacities of the cities would need to be enhanced. There's a lot of area that needs working there in terms of creation of data sets in standardized formats, interoperability of the data. And so I think there are a lot of such issues which exist. And if some of those things could be taken care of, I think there's a big opportunity which could be, which is there. So it can definitely be leveraged, yes.
Thanks, Shalini. I've got a reminder from the organizers that we have the closing ceremony at 7, although we have few more questions in the chat box. What I'll do is I'll share these questions with the speakers, and then maybe we can respond to the participants separately. So we had a very interesting discussion today. We had Sri Durga Shankar Mishra, we had Mr. Philpnell, who gave a very good overview about what India and Germany is doing in the front of sustainable and green mobility, and would also want to thank Mr. Pete, Dr. Shalini, Mr. Shirish, and Ms. Anya for the very interesting presentations on the topic of green mobility and CMPs and data-driven transformation and various other innovative financing models. I would also like to thank Jorgen for setting the context for the session. Unfortunately, since we're running out of time and the ministry will be having the closing ceremony in some time, I would thank all the participants for joining today's session, and we are closing the session today. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Amik, for the wonderful.